Hello, everybody, and welcome to this latest in the ValuesJam guest session series. And Philip, brilliant to have you here today. And to start with, please introduce yourself and tell people about the great work that you do.
Alan, thank you very much for having me on this wonderful opportunity. It's just absolutely amazing to make your acquaintance. I represent an organization by the name of the British School of Excellence, formerly known as the British School of Etiquette. We shifted names about 3.5 years ago, and the reason behind that was we just felt there was a bit of a disconnect, people looking at etiquette for posh people and all that sort of stuff, and it couldn't be further from the truth. The power of etiquette and manners and emotional intelligence are for where we sort of deliver from is very much from the heart and very much giving people that incredible platform to put their very best foot forward, to grow, to learn. And really, in essence, the brand and the organization was very much built on building confidence, changing lives, working from youngsters right through to the oldest person that's walked through the door, 78 years old, who came on our Train the Trainer. And so as a brand, we are very focused on helping people with the understanding of incorporating etiquette and manners and EQ into their lives. How do we present ourselves? How are we showing up every single day? And are we making an impact on other people's lives? Are we serving other people? And are we really encouraging people to just do good things in this world? And if you wouldn't mind me sharing, I'd love to share the 6 pillars that this is founded on. And it's got very little to do so-called English etiquette and manners, because I think hopefully the world, and Alan, you'll agree that I think the world over needs this guidance and steering in etiquette and manners and EQ to help us, move forward in this very sort of confused and upside down world at the moment, more so than ever before. And funny enough, before I go on to the pillars, the World Economic Forum shared some statistics, and I don't know why they used or worded it this way. They said these are the skills we'll need for the future of work. And actually, I sort of would rephrase that with these are the skills we've always needed for work and for life. And only one of those 10 skills was technology. The rest were all focused on EQ, leadership skills, creative thinking, diversity, intelligence, I think I said leadership, communication, the ability to accept change. And as I said, only one of those was technology. So in the 4th Industrial Revolution, which is where we all are right now, never more so much as now do we really need to build people with the confidence to connect as human beings again and really forge incredible relationships, because that is what this is all about. And the 6 pillars that the organization has really sort of formed are: the first one is, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. The second pillar is very much focused on having a what can I do for you attitude. How can I serve you? How can I help you? The third one is very much based on putting people at ease in a very short space of time, giving people the ability to feel comfortable and relaxed in your company. The fourth one is going around there's a wonderful quote, but I've sort of sort of turbocharged that into, if we all do a good random act of goodness each day, a random act of kindness, go out there and do something amazing on a daily basis, I truly believe we can set the world in the right direction. The fifth one is, there's one race, and that's the human race, and we need to understand that, and we need to put the past behind us. We need to be very focused on here and now and take control of the future in that line, in that vein. And the final one is that we all are in a wonderful opportunity to inspire people, to help people. So in other words, we are really the shepherds guiding and steering more so than ever before. We need to put that in place, and we have the privilege to do that. And we've got the opportunity to either guide in the right direction or make a complete hash of it. So that's really, in essence, what the British School of Excellence is all about.
I love that. And I'm kind of conscious that everything that you've talked about is at our discretion. And it's kind of easy to not do some of this stuff because people don't know that you're not doing it. But equally, all of it has such a major positive impact when you make a choice and do it.
100%, Alan. You're on the button. It's almost like you're walking down the street and you pick up a piece of litter and you throw it in the bin. That's exactly what it's like. You're not doing it for anyone else. You're not doing it for showmanship or, hey, look how great that person is. It's very interesting. I want to digress slightly. So I live in Surrey, but I come into London, where I am based today, for a couple of meetings every now and then. And I'm walking down, obviously on the pavement, and I noticed these electrical bicycles that you can rent and hire. There is no respect for those bicycles. They are left in the middle of the pavement, firstly. Secondly, I walked past 5 of them. It looked like they'd been in a lineup of dominoes. And so I picked them all up. And I'm not looking for a naughty badge on that at all. People have just really, if it doesn't belong to them, then they definitely don't have the same mindset and regard for respect of something. And even people often don't have respect for things that they should cherish and own. And that's gratitude as well.
Yeah, so right. And you're touching on a couple of buttons for me there. So litter, I don't know, it triggers me. It really does. And I had a conversation quite recently, actually, and I found myself saying that actually I can understand terrorists and the way they behave because they believe in something, even though we might disagree with it, they believe in something so strongly that they're willing to behave in the extreme.
Sure.
But actually, I find myself more accepting of that behavior than I do somebody leaving litter, because I just don't understand why anybody would do that. But the conversation was, isn't that quite a strange combination of views?
I mean, it's an extreme view, an extreme example, but it gets, honestly, Alan, it gets my goat so badly when I see litter. And every morning I go for a run or a walk with my lovely toy poodle. And I often take a bag with me because the amount of litter, and with all due respect, we are very fortunate. We live in a nice Surrey suburb, but the amount of litter and I find it atrocious. And then don't even get me onto people allowing their dog to foul the lawn. One thing is people not picking up this. The best one is people picking up and then leaving the actual bag with the poo on the pavement or hang on a bush or a tree. It just beggars belief. I mean, you can't be thinking, you can't have a brain cell if that's how you're behaving.
Yeah. Well, let's I'm already looking forward to this even more now. So here's the ValuesJam card deck. I'm just gonna tip the cards out. And how many piles shall I make in front of me, Philip?
Okay, so I'm going to throw a question back at you. What's a good number? 4, 5 piles? How does that sound?
You choose 4 or 5. Which would you prefer?
Let's do 5 piles.
5, okay. And they're actually different sizes. And so now if we start on my left, number 1, and my right, number 5, which pile would you like?
Let's go from left to right.
Your left. Pile 1?
Pile 1.
Okay. And in this pile, we've got just 7 cards. So a number between 1 and 7.
7's one of my best numbers. So let's go for 7.
Okay. So this is the card you've chosen, Philip. Recognition. And the first question is, what does recognition mean? And what does it look, feel, and sound like?
Okay. What does recognition mean? I mean, everyone wants recognition in one way or another, whether I think as human beings, we all want to be recognized for something or recognized as something. And the world, as we all know now, has become incredibly diverse in recognition. So what is recognition for me would be, I think it's not about whether you're born into the right sort of family or the so-called born with a silver spoon in your mouth, or with all due respect, I've seen people from all walks of life build the most incredible recognition for themselves. They've stepped up, they've done unbelievable things, and they've made themselves valuable in this world. And I think that really is a close attachment to recognition. We all have an opportunity to make a change and be recognized for that. And so recognition is a very strong word. It's almost runs for me parallel to influence. Again, I mentioned that in the pillars of the British School of Excellence. Influence is a privilege, and again, recognition, if you putting your best foot forward or trying your best at something, one needs to be praised for that and get recognized for that, and that I really feel is hugely important. If I can take it a step further, one of the things we share with all our students, no matter if it's a 6-year-old right up to, as I mentioned earlier, we had a 78-year-old walk through the door. we take them on a journey about putting flesh on the bone of actually getting people to really understand the core essence of what etiquette and manners are about. It's not a list of do's and don'ts on any level. And one of the things, once we've done that, I ask them to get a pen and write in a proper notebook. And the first line, I say, this is a note to self. And that first note to self is, I am my brand. I am my brand. And that for me is absolutely crucial. And a lot of the time we will get the teenagers and the youngsters to ask them, which brands do they identify? Why do they recognize that brand and does it resonate with them? Then the next sentence we get them to write down is, I would like to be the person that I would like to meet. And for them to really think about that. And why would you want to sort of meet someone who's aggressive and angry and horrible and nasty and a narcissist and all those sort of things? So this is, for me, I think that really I think the choice of recognition, that card popped up is definitely very appropriate, and it might have happened for a reason.
Yeah, well, you're touching on something, and you don't know the ValuesJam card game, but I can share with you that this appropriate pick of a card happens too often for it to be totally random. And don't get me wrong, I don't believe in kind of the kind of woo-woo edge of the world, but there is something about this game. And the most extreme example I remember was it was protection of the environment, the card that was drawn. And the lady who guided me to choose it said, Alan, have you just played a trick on me there? So I said, no, what do you mean? And she said, well, last night when I was thinking about playing this game with you, I wondered whether I would choose protection of the environment as the card. And it's like, whoa, hold on, where are we going? And like I say, I don't necessarily believe that there's a kind of magical explanation to that, but the way that I rationalize it to myself is that I don't need to know. I just enjoy the serendipity of it and let it be. So I'm glad you like the choice of card. And what about the metaphor part of the question, Philip? So when you think of the word recognition, what images come to mind? What sounds come to mind? And what feelings come to mind?
I mean, for me, a metaphor and recognition is I think people always say, do a good deed each day, and you don't need to share it with anyone. It must just happen subtly. And I think recognition, you can be recognized by from a distance for doing a good deed on a daily basis. You can be seen to be recognized for the sport that you play. In other words, you can really influence people out there and give people that ability to believe in themselves, to recognize themselves, that every single one of us has an opportunity. And if we put a lot of time and energy into developing ourselves, we can definitely become a force to be reckoned with, and that for me is really strong recognition. To be recognized, as well as I think in any industry and in any aspect of life that we choose to go down, there's always an opportunity to get recognized and get noticed, and therefore again to have that influence on people. So for me, I think if I were working with youngsters, and for example, one of the things we do with our organization is we really make an effort to understand people's personality traits before we really dive in. So, for example, Alan, if you were 15-year-old or even an adult, which you are, we would, and let's say you were a keen footballer, we would definitely find the similarity in the metaphors we could relate to you to understand how important it is to be recognized for what you're doing and your ability. And that, I think, is really, really important. What does recognition sound like? I suppose it can sound like quite a few things, and one that springs to mind is people cheering you on, people really who stand behind you and encourage you. And words of strong admiration and affirmation to really push you forward. And cheer, I think that really definitely springs to mind. Recognition, someone applauding you and someone not putting you down. The most important thing in life is to build people, not to squash people. And that's so easily done through human nature. Humans have an ability to really poo-poo and to shun people. And let's recognize the good, and let's recognize their talents rather than their weaknesses, and then work on those, help them build where they need to build. And I think that for me is a very strong element of this very powerful word, recognition.
Yeah, and you mentioned applause. That's the sound that comes to my mind most readily in terms of recognition, and it's that quite emotional sense that you have. You mentioned that you went to a show at the weekend, and I'm sure there was an ovation at the end of that. And to be part of recognizing a performance like that feels very special, actually. And I'm not quite sure what the science is behind it, but there's something extremely uplifting about being either on the receiving end of recognition or giving recognition, especially when you're part of a large crowd or group of people that are doing it. And actually, you've made me, this bit of the conversation has made me think about how maybe in society it would be good for people to try harder to recognize those people that maybe aren't on the stage performing a show. During COVID, I remember the government getting people to stand outside the door and clap the NHS, which mixed views on this, because on the one hand, I think that it was wonderful to do something to recognize those great people who basically kept the country going and put themselves at personal risk. But the mixed view I have is that then the government wasn't happy to pay these people a reasonable rate. And it's like, well, how can you put on the pretense and asking people to applaud on their doorstep, but then not follow it up with concrete support? So a bit of a mixed view there. But I think the real point is how could people recognize those that perhaps are less seen in society?
Absolutely. And Alan, that it just gives me goosebumps, because where do I start with this? I mean, in South Africa, every year there's the Comrades Marathon, which is it's 100-kilometer run from Pietermaritzburg in Natal down to Durban, or the other way up, and the other way up, a lot of hills. And you stand there, and I was very fortunate to be in Africa in August, not this year, but last year. Unfortunately, my dad was ill, and I had to spend some time out there, which was amazing, great privilege. And then he left us. But during that time when I was there was the Comrades Marathon, and where my parents' home was in a little village called Kloof, we were able to walk and step over the bridge that went over the highway to cheer these incredible people on. I mean, this is a serious distance, and it's tough, it's grueling. I mean, I used to run half marathons, and that in itself is just not, then you got the 42Ks, and now you're doing 100Ks. And this is something that you're seeing these incredible people, and they're doing it for causes, for charities, for themselves, for their own. Hey, can I do this? Can I push myself? Can I absolutely recognize that I can do something that maybe, for example, someone who's not fit, or someone, and they train for it, or someone who is not a runner, and they say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to finish this race. And that is life. And I think that is really, really important. And I know we don't want to get onto the government, because they shouldn't be recognized for anything, quite frankly, and that's my opinion. But I find that there's a lot of hot air and not a lot of follow through, and it's really unfortunate, because we as human beings, we need to start pulling together and standing up and get recognized for what we need to focus on, not some glorified monument that gets put up in Hyde Park and then gets pulled down because they made a complete mess of it, costing £7 million. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know, I'm detracting slightly, but going back to your analogy, for us to be able to sort of recognize and applaud the NHS for what they did was quite extraordinary. And again, going back to what you said, there are so many people that don't get recognized in this world. And as you can appreciate and know, and definitely through the work you're doing, is the amount of mentally ill people that there are out there in this world is devastating. And we need to go down that route of recognition 150% on that, in that avenue.
Yeah. And it takes me back to something you said a little while ago about the if you had a young teenager who was keen on football, because recognition is a really personal thing. And I remember, having worked in large corporate organizations, sometimes they put in recognition programs that are so impersonal that they don't have the impact that they were supposed to. And I always, when I was working in corporate organizations, I always invested in recognition. And I still believe that it's the best return on investment that you can get in business. And we put in place a recognition program whereby people would be nominated, and then the best example would be chosen. We focused it on the behavior, not the reward, because again, I'm a great believer in people doing things because they want to, not because they want to win the prize.
Yeah.
And then we did have a small prize. So it was a £100 gift, but you, the winner, had to tell us what gift it was they wanted to be presented with, rather than the business present a £100 voucher or money or whatever it was. And the reason that I did that was because I wanted the person to receive something extremely valuable in their eyes from me as the representative of the business, in order to have that a positive impact on them. And the number of times that people had tears in their eyes at just being presented with something was extraordinary, actually. Yeah, so the key point that you made there, I think that it was worth just focusing on, was this thing about recognition being delivered in a very personal way. Another example, actually, so it was a team meeting in a hotel, and it was around about this time of the year. And for an icebreaker, I said to my senior leadership team, what would be the best present you could possibly receive for Christmas? And the guy who was the food and beverage director said that he would love to have a meal with a famous chef, and named the chef. So I remembered this, and the following year I got in touch with the famous chef's PA, and I explained what had happened in our meeting and what the guy had said his best present would be. And I asked the PA to ask the chef if there was any possibility that he would invite my colleague to have lunch with him, which he did. And when I told the food and beverage guy, you could have just knocked him to the floor. You know, he was so overwhelmed with joy. And so that, again, you know, personalized recognition for somebody. And again, it's not that I'm purely philanthropic. I wanted him to perform at his very best for the business that I was running. And that was one of the ways that I thought that could be achieved.
Wow. Alan, everything's down to personalization. Everything is down to, it's recognizing people's likes and what they don't like. That's recognition as well. That's getting to know someone. So, for example, may I ask, are you a whiskey drinker out of interest?
Yes, I enjoy whiskey.
Okay, so what spirits, or what don't you enjoy? What is something that you don't enjoy?
I never touch vodka if we're staying on alcohol.
Okay, so let's say you and I build up a rapport and a friendship, and every year I go and find one of the best vodkas and I deliver it with a nice Christmas card, and you read it, you go, wow, that's very pleasant, thank you so much, but I don't know you, I haven't recognized. That's not recognition. Especially if I built up a rapport with you, I need to find touch points in your life that really resonate with you. It's like recognizing an individual's child's achievements, for example, and that in itself is going to be such a connector, and that to me is huge recognition. And it's the ability to learn to listen, to understand rather than respond, and really taking on board and getting to know people and understanding what revs their motor. And as we know, promotion and a financial incentive lasts all of X amount of time, very little. But when you do I mean, that chef, let me tell you right now, that food and beverage manager, if you ask him what's one of his highlights in his life has been. Now, a lot of the time, if I said to you, Alan, give me something that stood out for you this year, what was one thing you happened to you this year that you really remember fondly, or you were over the moon about? If I could ask you that question, what's happened? What stood out for you this year? One thing.
So it would be being in the sea on my birthday in Cyprus, and it being warm.
Yeah, and that'll be one of your highlights this year, right? That's a highlight in your life this year. Now, for that chef, that's going to be a highlight for his life. He'll never forget what you know, Alan Williams did for him. You went above and beyond. It's the least of, he wasn't even remotely expecting something along those lines, and boom, that in itself is hugely. It's just phenomenal. That is genuine, pure recognition in itself.
And it doesn't have to be big either. So you've reminded me, I was invited to speak at the RAF club a couple of years ago. And I arrived early to make sure that the room setup was okay. And there was a lady cleaning the brass rail of the spiral staircase. And she did it really, really well, you know, paid real attention to doing it. And I just went up to her and told her that I'd been watching her cleaning, and I really thought she'd done a great job. And you could, you know, she lit and then walked off on a cloud of air. You know, it was like, and just that small mention, I hope, set her up for the day and made her continue to do what she did so well.
Yeah, and that's the power of a compliment. You know, going down that route is a genuine compliment. That is a compliment to her, and the prowess. You know, I guarantee very few people, if any, had come up to her and said, "Wow, that's an amazing job you're doing. Wow, that's exceptional." And that, you know, again, I think detracting slightly is actually not even detracting. I've always had a passion about writing, as in thank you notes and thank you notes. So we have a brand called the Power of the Pen at the organization, where we actually give people a journey into learning to write really beautifully. And I will carry thank you notes wherever I go. So if I've had a pleasant flight, I get off, and as we land, I'll write a thank you note to the team and the stewardesses, and I'll hand it over when I leave the aircraft. Or if I've been fortunate enough to stay in a hotel, a nice hotel or any hotel, write a little thank you note to the concierge or to the chamber person. And obviously, if possible, if it's allowed, leave a gratuity. But that's, the gratuity is a bonus. But just that recognition and thanking them for what they've done and for recognizing their role in making this wheel turn is just absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, you know, you being from South Africa reminds me of the phrase "sawubona" in terms of recognition. And when I don't know if you have the same understanding as this of the term, but the way that it was described to me is that the translation is "we see you" rather than "I see you." And it was explained that the reason that it's in the plural is because when one Zulu looks into the eyes of the Zulu that they're meeting, when they say sawubona, they're looking at that person not only through their own eyes, but through the eyes of all of their ancestors as well. And that gives me goosebumps actually just talking about it, because it is so beautiful and far removed from kind of Western society where you say, "How are you?" but you're actually out of the door before somebody gets a chance to answer.
Completely. I mean, the amount of times someone says, "How are you?" "Well, I'm having a bit of a rough day." And, "Oh, well, I'm glad to hear you they haven't even listened or heard you. And I would like to take it one step further. There's a wonderful African word called Ubuntu. And that word Ubuntu is "I am because you are." And again, it complements Sawubona, which again, so powerful. And interestingly, there's a great series on Netflix called The Playbook, which is fascinating. And that Netflix series is about 30 minutes, little increments of amazing coaches that have taken teams to various different levels. And one of them was, the first opening was a gentleman running a basketball team. And he brought that word Ubuntu into the team in the change room. And there was a flip in their talent. There was a flip in their teamwork. There was it exploded, and brought them together to, I think, win whatever the American championships were, I don't know, the National Basketball tournament or whatever, NBA, or I don't know. But anyway, that was a huge pivotal moment, and just fascinating.
So let's get a bit practical now, Philip. So the next question is, where have you noticed a lack of recognition?
For me, without sounding sort of pointing fingers, there's a lot of lack of recognition every day. Well, you just need to walk down the streets and you don't see people seeing one another. They don't greet each other. There's no connection, and this is really, really sad. I think that the lack of, not only that, but in life, I think in couples and relationships, sometimes we don't recognize our partners, and we don't recognize their qualities and their what they do for the family, or how they serve so many other aspects of life. And especially, I'm a big fan of women, and I think women take on too much, and we owe them a huge amount of gratitude. But if you think about life, there's the mum taking care of kid off school, this homework, dad walks in through the door, everything's sorted out, boom, 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 and it's almost expected. And I feel this is something really fundamental, and we as human beings, we can work on that. It's very much along the lines of, if we go and park a motor car by the ocean and leave it there for a year, when we get back, it'll be off its axis. It would have rusted, and it wouldn't be there. You can't put it back together again. And this is where in life, and whether you're whether you're running an organization, you're running a small company, whatever it is, and you're in a relationship, if you don't put energy and fuel and recognize the good and the value, then it's going to crumble. It'll eventually just decay. And more so than anything, I think as human beings, we forget to recognize the good. We're very quick to recognize the negatives. We're really quick to point a finger, or why did you do that? Why? But why? And be accused. But I think if we can turn that around, and for me, Alan, this really comes down to presence intelligence. I think let's learn to be more present. Let's be physically and mentally and emotionally in play. So, for example, you've had a day at work where you've had a few challenges, and now you walk through the front door. Are you showing up like you should show? Are you being present with your family? Are you there in mind, soul? Are you there? Are you embracing your partner? Are you embracing the kids? Are you really being present and focused? Are you being in that moment? Nothing to do. You've left the day behind you, and we've got to reconnect with ourselves to show up and be present for our loved ones and the people we care about, and to recognize all the good things that are going on, not the negatives.
I think it's a fantastic point, and I think there's something here about the lack of visibility sometimes. So you talked about how, and this is very stereotypical, isn't it? But the busy executive coming home, and dinner's been cooked, the house is clean and tidy, and all the rest of it, because he hasn't seen what it was and the work that's been done in order to get it where it is. There might be a tendency to not recognize it because it's not so visible, and maybe like you were saying, we're not present enough. And you've also reminded me of a guy that I used to work with on this point about, are we present after that busy day? He used to explain that when he got home and put his key in the front door at home and turned it, he viewed it as turning on his family engine.
Love that. Love
Isn't
that.
it great?
Love it. Absolutely love it. It is so powerful. And thinking of recognition, just as you said, it's like the fairies have been and everything's just sorted out. You walk in the door but if there's something that's out of place, what's going on around here? It's mess, and we're ready to
Yeah.
throw it. And again, that'll just trigger anyone to seeing red, with all due respect. And recognition for me is also about understanding that when people are facing challenges, we need to recognize that as well. We need to not only put our feet in their shoes, but we need to actually start walking in their shoes as well, and recognizing what it is that they may be facing. And maybe we can't solve problems. And I think we as men are very good at, but darling, if I were you, I would have done X, Y, and Z and give it advice. It's the last thing in my opinion, my wife wants to hear me giving advice unless she asks for it. It's, I've got a great idea for you. I think you should do X, Y, and Z with your life. Well, who am I to give you that? I can make a suggestion, but I'm not, hey, I think you should do that. Or, you know what I would have done in that sort of situation, because that is just not helpful. You're not recognizing, and you're not being in the moment to take on board. Maybe they just want to download, and you're a pair of ears or that shoulder to lean on, and therefore digest it. And if they need some guidance and steering, they'll ask for it.
Yeah, and that walking in the other person's shoes, I think, is the way to have a much better understanding. And again, you've reminded me of a situation. This was in a conference center, and I used to so two times a year, the senior team were invited to go and work in a department in a fairly menial role so that they could understand what that was like. Now, one time, my job was to help the guy that manned the massive dishwasher machine.
Yes.
So in this place, we served dinners for like up to 700 people. So it was at large scale events. And so it was like, how to describe it? Like a small car wash, I guess. And so all of the plates are in this thing. It comes through, and then my job, I was told, what you need to do is empty the machine of the plates and stack them over here. So I was like, okay, I can do that. That's fine. So the doors opened. I picked up the first plate and let it go very quickly because it was scalding hot, and then did my best. And the guy who I was working with came along and said, come on, Alan, we can't be waiting for you. And just started moving these plates probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 times faster than I was able to do it. And I was in awe of this guy. He was just amazing. And I just remember thinking, I had no idea of how talented this person was to be able to do that when I was nowhere. And if I'd been left there on my own, the whole operation would have fallen apart that night. Where are we going with this? I guess it is, again, coming back to that point around recognizing those people that perhaps are invisible, or their work is invisible, and them not receiving enough credit, actually.
Absolutely. Everyone has a role. Everyone has a responsibility, and we need to respect that. Just piggybacking off your lovely example and story there, one of my influence books that I find has had an impact on me many years ago, about 10 years ago. My wife gifted me a book by Isidore Sharp, the founder of the Four Seasons Hotel Group. Fascinating story. And one of the things he mentioned right from the word go, that they were going to introduce the golden rule, the golden key in the business. And that was, if we're going to set up 5-star hotels and have 5-star high-end guests, we're going to have to treat our team, the staff, exactly the same way, because that is fundamental. You can have the most beautiful buildings and gorgeous decor and that sort of thing, furnishings, but if you don't have the most wonderful team around you, you've actually got very little. And he took it right to the degree where, literally, as you were sharing, is once a month having a meeting with everybody in a department, and from the chap or person who swept the back of house to the outdoors, that they would ask him or her, give us some input on how we can do things better from your eyes. Where have you seen this and that? And he would go up the ranks, and they would get everyone's input on how they could just tweak things and work things slightly better. And again, that for me is huge recognition that everyone has a purpose and something. And as you said, you know, that person, I can guarantee that dishwasher's hands, he could have sandpapered a wall smooth, I mean, like a wooden plank smooth, because I've been in that situation and I've never been afraid of hard work. And I was fortunate enough, my first job, funny enough, and I was cleaning tables here in London at the Hard Rock Cafe.
Was it?
And yeah, it was working in the dish room, cleaning tables, busboying. We weren't allowed to waiter. They only had waitresses. And then I went off to do a ski season in Kitzbühel in Austria. And the job I could get was a dish. I was known as a dish pig. And then I'll tell you what, okay, it wasn't 700 people, but it was a hostel style place, which we were having about 200 covers a night. And I was there and peeling potatoes, you know, the woman, Jessica Langer, she refused to get a machine that peeled him. So I honestly, I lived on the Neutrogena hand cream, and that was my job, and I embraced every moment and had the best time ever, you know. So, you know, that's for me is being able to put your hand and turn your hand to things. Nothing should be above us ever or below us. We've got to learn to understand this, and that is again recognizing when someone needs your support, whatever it is. It's very much along the lines of I suppose, let's use the hospitality sector. The attitude is not my job, not my job. And that attitude doesn't work, unfortunately. You need to recognize that everything needs to be done as a team and to work together, to recognize how important that is to make it work.
Yeah. And I love you talking about the hospitality sector, because that was my first career, and I love it to bits to this day. And the just truly wonderful people in very good hotels. Obviously, not all hotels are good ones, but I've met some fantastic people and really enjoyed that sense of being part of a team. And also, you mentioned Four Seasons. That's one of my favorite hotel groups. I was lucky enough to work for a Marriott property here in the UK that I led, and Ritz-Carlton was owned by Marriott at the time, and they have their famous phrase of ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen, which is, it just sums it up so well. And the hotel or hospitality sector was such a brilliant training ground for me, even though I didn't realize it at the time, because I think when I left the hospitality sector, I suddenly realized that in the hospitality sector, it teaches you probably no more than two things, actually. One is that your guest is the center of attention and the reason that you're all there.
Yeah.
And the second is that the people at the front line are the people that create the reputation of the hotel. And then when you move into other businesses, you find that the senior people are more revered and the more junior people are not really recognized or credited with so much. And so I've been able to bring all of those lessons from hospitality sector to help leaders in organizations that I do with my business today. And recognition is a big part of it, because we're more than the job we do. You know, we are human beings.
Absolutely. And one size does not fit all. One size fits one. And that is crucial. And that's where so many people fall down in life. You know, to go not woo-woo, but there's definitely huge depth to this. There's a gentleman you may be familiar with by the name of Gary Chapman. He wrote the 5 Love Languages. It's fascinating. So the 5 love languages, and this is about recognition. This is seriously deep about recognition. So all of us as human beings have got a love language, and that doesn't mean, you know, love language and jumping into bed and blah blah. No, so one of the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts. The other one is quality time, and the other one is quality time, words of affirmation. It's going to come to me, gifts. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But if we understand each other's love languages as human beings, we can then absolutely get the best and the most out of someone. So, for example, if I may ask, Alan, are you married?
No longer.
No longer. Okay, I went down that route and I remarried. So, for example, my wife, her love language is quality time, and I love quality time. I absolutely do. But I suppose one of my love languages is words of affirmation, and acts of service. And before COVID, I was doing quite a lot of traveling around the world. If I said to Kerry and I said, should the three of us, or we very rarely went to, our son's 9.5, and let's just do a long weekend away somewhere. That would fill her love cup. Boom, her love cup starts to overflow. If she said to me, let's do a long weekend away, it would absolutely start to fill my love cup, but not to the level it fills hers. But if for example, I do something or get a wonderful bit of praise, or hey, thank you so much for doing it, that fills my love cup up, for example. And then all of a sudden, when both love cups are full, all of a sudden this beautiful connection and energy starts to take place. And when the British School of Etiquette formed, I was pretty much running everything in the organization. We're 10 years old now, and my one business coach said to me, Philip, you got to hire someone. And I had my stomach did a break, but went to breakdancing mode because I didn't have the revenue to hire anyone. And he said, always take on board what your coach tells you to do. And I said, okay. And I went online and I found this incredible, what she found us, Lucretia. She was half Argentinian, half Italian, just fairly new into the country, in 24, 25. And I brought her on board. And it was brilliant because she then started to be able to do a lot of the transactional side of things, and I could see more transition side of things, and we became accredited as an organization and all of those things. But what was interesting was quite early on, I recognized what Lucretia's love languages were, and they were two really important areas. One was words of affirmation, the other one was quality time. And every Friday, her now husband was working at that stage for a Chinese company, and every Friday afternoon they'd have off. And often on a Friday, sort of 10 in the morning, I say, hey, it's Friday today. I don't want to see you after lunch. Go home and go and spend some time with Henry. So that was boom. And the other one was these amazing words of affirmation. I love the PowerPoint you've done. That's awesome work you've done. And Alan, if we were ever running a workshop in London over a weekend, it wasn't part of her job description unless I'd specifically said, could you come and support? She'd come bounding in on a Saturday with gifts for the students and saying, hey, I'm Lucretia, the one you've been speaking to on the phone. Just wanted to come and meet you in person and here's some chocolates for you. And it was gold dust. It was unbelievable. That's recognition.
Absolutely. What a brilliant story. And well done you for taking the advice when it wasn't easy to make that choice.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Or I've learned that through, and that's what, we are in the coaching industry. That's what we do, but it's a lot deeper than that. But it is, you take on, if you absolutely enhance someone who's got lots of experience and a lot of research and passion behind them, you just follow, you just say yes, and you build the parachute on the way down as you're falling out the aircraft.
So can you just remind me, Gary, what was the author's name?
Gary Chapman. His name's Gary Chapman, and it's called The 5 Love Languages.
Right, okay. Now, I'm conscious of time, so we're going to bring this Values Jam to a close. And the final question is always the same, Philip. So it's this: what are you encouraged to do differently about recognition as a result of our conversation today?
For me, it's very much about being conscientious and situationally aware. I think that's fundamental, is learn to be situationally aware of what's going on around you and recognize the people around you, recognize what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, recognize the importance of respecting people, their environment, their personal space. What are they in earshot of? I think those are the most crucial sort of takeaways from today that that I know that I can take away, and hopefully your wonderful listeners will take away. And that falls down into a very simple example, is that too many of us, for example, are now stuck to our mobile phones, and in public we're talking at the top of our voices. We're having a Zoom conversation or Skype conversation with someone for everyone to hear. No one wants to hear that, and it's just, we didn't walk out the front door. I would imagine, are you in your 50s, Alan? Is that your roundabout figure? Are you in your 50s?
A bit older.
Bit older. So, okay, you're looking fantastic. But, we couldn't walk out the door with a phone because it was attached to the wall.
Yeah.
Now we feel we're naked without it. And I just feel we've lost the plot in becoming situationally aware and self-aware of what's going on. So these are the big takeaways for me on this beautiful word that you picked out that pack.
Okay. And if I can just ask you, when will you have the chance to put what you've just described into practice?
ASAP. I mean, this is the beautiful thing about this. If you are focused and self-aware and you're using you're conscious and you're conscious of what's happening, it's immediate. It is absolutely, it's the same as being kind. If you anything wherever you go in the world, just be kind. That you can implement that right this second. I can walk out the store and compliment someone, boom, and I could elevate them. They might be having the worst start of the week, and because you pay them an amazing compliment, it can take them to another level, and that is how powerful this is.
And you've mentioned the word kind. So I was fortunate enough I've just been nominated as a kindness champion by the World Kindness Movement. So, very lovely thing for them to do. But actually, they invited me to record a short video about my feelings and thoughts about kindness. And that caused me to think a bit more deeply about kindness than I had previously done. And I found myself coming up with I'm sharing this with you, it's only about 10 days old, so it's really new and a bit rough and ready. But the model is first to have your antennae on all the time. So it's this situational awareness thing that you were talking about. And then to collect and retain the data that your antennae are picking up. And the reason this is important is because you don't know when you're going to be able to use that data at some point in the future. And then when the opportunity arises, so for instance, let's say you found out that somebody's favorite color is red. And then at some point in the future, you're able to buy them a present and use red wrapping paper. And then when they receive the gift, they say, oh my goodness, red is my favorite color. What a surprise. And like you said earlier, boom. So this whole thing around kindness, I believe, starts with the situational awareness point that you raised at the beginning of this final piece of the conversation. I've got two things that I'm going to do. One is I'm going to buy the 5 Love Languages book as a Christmas gift. That's brilliant timing as we're recording this in December. And then the second thing I'm going to do is it's kind of linked to your situational awareness, but it's more about appreciating what has happened for us to be where we are at the moment. So if, for instance, you go into the kitchen and it's clean and somebody's cleaned it, to actually be mindful of that rather than just take it for granted. So I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that, but I think it is possible to be more aware of the things that you haven't seen that have been done.
Absolutely. I love that. I absolutely love that. And well done on that award. I think that is just so beautiful. And, I just wish everybody would have that mindset, and when I went through my my separation, actually, I spent some time with a cognitive behavioral therapist, and she used that wonderful analogy of because I'm always giving and I'm a people pleaser, and as a result you end up getting hurt. And she said, Philip, think of yourself as an insect and having these antennae and polishing them and really taking on board what the antennae are feeding back to you.
Oh, really?
And it was an amazing lesson. It was unbelievable. Have I become any better? Yeah, I think I have. Not always just I'm sort of maybe don't just always jump in, but or say yes. But at the end of the day, it was a fascinating lesson for me. And that we actually have a coffee mug that we give to our students if we see them in person. It says, in a world where you can be anything, just be kind. And for me, that is just boom. And I it's all about that. It's about being thoughtful. It's about being observant, and I love your analogy. It goes back to that personal attention to detail. It's about getting to know people and taking notes, mental notes. If you need to, you dip into the loo and you put down a few little things in your phone about what resonates with that individual. You know, if they're proud about their son getting into Oxford University, next time you see them, how's your son getting on Oxford University? He must be well ensconced there 6 months in. How's he getting on? How's the degree going? Boom, that's just going to trigger the most beautiful, beautiful energy. And it's going to make that person feel so felt and heard and appreciated. And that in itself is just phenomenal.
Well, what a brilliant way to finish, Philip. And I love the theme of deep humanity that has run through this conversation. So thank you for bringing that to this Values Jam.
Well, I have to thank you for reaching out, because it's been a true joy. It really has. And I'm again going to congratulate you on that wonderful award. I think it's just such kudos and huge respect.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.